Yet, when the other half of the mask fell and Qi Rong's entire face was revealed, it became obvious that he didn't look that much like Xie Lian after all. Their noses, lips, and the contours of their lower jaws were all similar in shape, but their brows and eyes were different. Xie Lian's eyes were calm and peaceful. Qi Rong's brows were high and sharp. His eyes were also much more thin and slanted. He was certainly still a good-looking young man, but anyone could see, just from his face, that he wasn't one to be messed with. After having been beaten to a bloody pulp, he could finally squint open his eyes and blearily noticed that the one grabbing him had changed form into a youth dressed in red. Qi Rong had never seen Hua Cheng's real face, but the moment he saw the red robes, he was shocked and furious. "It's you! It's you!" Hua Cheng had changed back to his true form. "You haven't answered my question. How did Prince An Le die?" Because of how frightening his eyes looked, Xie Lian rushed forward and cried, "San Lang!" Humans and ghosts alike had already cleared the cave, and Xie Lian ran to his side. "Are you all right? Don't be angry. Please, don't be angry. Everything's fine. Just calm down. It's all fine. Everything is fine." He gently rubbed Hua Cheng's shoulders a few times, and his voice became soothingly soft. When Xie Lian was younger, whenever he got angry or upset, his parents would always stroke his back like this and comfort him with their gentle voices. Thus, he used the same method on Hua Cheng. Turns out, it was quite effective. Hua Cheng's eyes were turbulent before, but after being soothed, his lips quivered for a second, and he slowly but finally calmed. His eyes cleared once more. Seeing this, Xie Lian let out a breath of relief, but suddenly, even before he finished exhaling, Hua Cheng swiftly reached out a hand and gently patted his shoulder once. This pat instantly froze Xie Lian's body and rooted him to where he stood. He hadn't prepared for Hua Cheng to do anything to him, which was why this was done so easily. He didn't know what Hua Cheng was up to, but he wasn't worried about himself. Rather, he was worried for Hua Cheng, afraid that he might lose control again like earlier. He was about to open his mouth to ask when he realized not only could he not move, he couldn't speak either, and he felt he may have gotten into a rather difficult situation. Qi Rong might have been weak in fistfights, but his mouth was certainly tough, and he started cursing while still covered in blood. "You fucking crazy one-eyed snake. Did I fucking piss you off while eating in my own fucking house?" Hua Cheng smiled, then smacked his head down onto the ground again before picking it up. "How did Prince An Le die?" "What the fuck does that have to do with you?" Qi Rong cried, and Hua Cheng bashed him down again. "How did Prince An Le die?" This went on for a while, and Hua Cheng kept his cool smile, dribbling Qi Rong's head like a ball, violently bashing it over 10 times. Although it was violent, Qi Rong couldn't die, and because he couldn't die, it was insufferable. Even a skull made of steel couldn't stand this kind of torture, and Qi Rong finally changed his tune. "If you're so free, why don't you go read a fucking history book?" Hua Cheng laughed coldly. "If history books recorded the truth, why would I come and ask useless trash like you?" He lifted his hand again, and Qi Rong yelled, "It's Lang Chenchou! He was killed by Lang Chenchou!" The Dharma doll in Xie Lian's arms jerked and started shaking vigorously. It was shaking too hard, and Xie Lian couldn't move to hold it down. So alas, he watched as the Lang Chenchou Dharma doll fell out and onto the ground, madly spinning back and forth. Hua Chang didn't turn his head, but he undid the spell. A blast of red smoke and Lang Chencho's form leapt from within. He was royalty, high and mighty, and had never been wronged like this in his entire life. He pointed at Qirong in rage. How could you insult me like this and smear my name? Anle and I were friends. Who did you say killed him? Qirong was also shocked to see him jump out. You're Lang Chencho? Why the fuck are you here too? Lang Chencho himself didn't understand why he was brought to this lair either, but was simply enraged by Qirong's accusations earlier and felt compelled to clear things up. Prince Anle died of illness, so why would you accuse me of killing him out of the blue? Hua Chang looked on coldly, but stopped dribbling Qirong's head, so Qirong got pulled into the fight. Died of a fucking illness. Only you would believe it. He died soon after the gilded banquet, so he must have been assassinated by you lot. If not you, then those old withering fucks in court. He was muddying the waters and spewing garbage. Lang Chencho's face was growing grimmer. No wonder everyone says that the green ghost Qirong is vulgar and crass. Now that I've met you, you are indeed disgusting. His offhand comment stabbed Qirong exactly where it hurt. After becoming famous for so many centuries, all of heaven and hell taunted him for being boorish and crude, and he hated it. His face dropped immediately. I may be vulgar, but it's still much better than your intolerance. Friends this, friends that. What peaceful relationship. Can Shanle and Yong'an be friends? Can they coexist in peace? You're as fake as your shitty parents. Disgusting. Hearing him insult his parents, Lang Chencho was furious. Shut up. My esteemed parents were sincere and genuine, not fake. I won't allow you to spit on their names. Qirong spat. You're all nothing more than the descendants of some rebels. Who gave you the fucking right? What sincerity? To donate titles and land to us, the people of Shanle? Shameless. You stole what was ours, then handed it back out like it's some sort of gift. Everything you owned belonged to Shanle. Lang Chencho was not skilled in arguing and actually froze, then stuttered, You. Qirong saw how he stammered and felt a rush of satisfaction and resolved to aggravate him even more. He laughed. Even if you guys killed Anle, it was a profitable death. Shanle lost but one man, but Yong'an paid an entire gilded banquet. Too bad we couldn't kill you too and have all of you taste what it's like to end an entire bloodline. Hearing this, Lang Chencho was bewildered. What did you say? Shilian mentally cursed. He so desperately wanted to bash Qirong back into the ground, the same way Hua Chang did, and shut him up. But with this petrification spell, he couldn't move a single muscle. What do you mean you couldn't kill me too? Qirong only wanted to avenge himself on the vulgar comment and boasted, Truly, the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. My lord's stupidity spans hundreds of years. My eyes are opened. Think, us Shanle are thoroughly disgusted with you, Yong'an. Whoever doesn't hate you is unfit to be called a citizen of Shanle. Did you honestly think that the royal descendants of Shanle would be friendly with the royalty of Yong'an? It was all to infiltrate your guard, to make it easy to plot, and to wash your gilded birthday banquet with blood. Shilian was struggling to break free, and Lang Chencho was frozen to the spot. After a moment, he stammered. The Prince Anle and the Goshe were they on the same side? Lang Chencho was filled with anguish, thinking that his beloved teacher and friend had conspired against him together. However, Qirong said, Guo Shi, that wicked Guo Shi Fangxin, who the hell is on the same side as him? Lang Qianqiu heard this question and was baffled. You washed the gilded banquet with blood, but the one to do so, was it not the Guo Shi? Were you not both on the same side? He was thoroughly confused. Who the fuck knows where that evil cultivator came from? Qirong replied. It had nothing to do with him. Listen up, Lang Qianqiu. The blood spilt at your Yong'an gilded banquet was all done by the people of Shanle. Anle had already planned to kill off every single f***ing rebel at the banquet. But that f***ing weird Guo Shi of yours suddenly burst in. Anle had thought the plans failed and ran to me for help, asking me what to do if he was discovered. But who knew that very night it would be announced that the one who f***ed everything was the Guo Shi, and he became a wanted man across the entire kingdom. It took Lang Qianqiu a while to process the information. If that was the case, then why didn't you speak up? Qirong clicked his tongue. Are you f***ing dumb? Why would I say anything? Was it a bad thing to have someone take the blame? Can you level me up to a supreme with this lie? He was relishing this more and more the more he spoke. I get it. You couldn't believe it, right? I heard you nailed your own teacher into a coffin. He laughed. What a f***ing idiot. You killed the wrong person. Hearing that vile, hearty laughter, Xilian closed his eyes and cursed again. Lang Qianqiu was trembling with rage. You're wrong. He then whipped around and shouted toward Xilian. If that was true, even if he didn't say anything, why didn't you? Qirong spat out a broken tooth. And who the fuck is that? What, are you all here to have a fucking party in my cave? Everyone ignored him. Lang Qianqiu demanded, if you didn't do it, if you didn't kill, then why did you admit to guilt? Just then, Xilian's body became loose. Huachang had undone the petrification spell. However, it might have been too late. Lang Qianqiu was waiting for his response, and Xilian stood up slowly, working out the kinks in his wrists and joints. After a pause, Xilian blurted out the words, complete nonsense. Lang Qianqiu had fully expected him to say, it's true, just as he said. Yet the words Xilian uttered completely revoked his own relief of guilt from Qirong's recount. Qirong was pissed. Complete nonsense, says who? Says I, Xilian answered. He looked down on Qirong and said, all this lying and empty words, what proof do you have that the ones who spilt blood at the gilded banquet were the descendants of Shanle? Qirong was amused. All the killed are dead, so what proof could I have? Besides, it's been hundreds of years. What proof is left? Which is why I say that this is all complete nonsense, Xilian replied. Shanle and Yong'an are dynasties of the past, long lost to time. Is there any point in you stirring up trouble with nothing more than bits of history? The tone of his voice startled Qirong, and he looked as if he was remembering something, narrowing his eyes. Xilian turned to Lang Qianqiu and said in a calming tone, I killed your father. You saw it with your own eyes. This was during a time soon after my second banishment. I was filled with frustration and caused a great wrong. This is all my fault. There's no need to drag anyone else down with me. This man is full of deception. Dragging Prince Anle's name through the mud was only to avenge himself of your comment on his vulgarity. If any bystander was to listen in on this conversation, they would find it hilarious. A fight for the title to the true culprit of a murder case. One would think spilling blood at the gilded banquet was some sort of glorious deed. Lang Qianqiu was in turmoil and profoundly confused. He held his head and thought for a long while before speaking. That's right, it was you and no one else. He had seen with his own eyes. That night, he ran to the gilded palace excitedly, only to see the black-clad Guoshe pull out a thin, long sword from the chest of his father, splattering blood everywhere. And at that moment, his father, the king of Yong'an, had stretched out his hand toward him, still breathing. It was after he rushed over that the hand was dropped limply. Just then, Qirong, who was lying on the ground, suddenly spoke up. "Cousin Crown Prince, is that you?"